Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I've been thinking for quite a while now that I wanted to revisit the Bioshock series. It's been a really long time since I've actually played the games, and I never even got to beat them. So today I'm going to be talking about the story of the first Bioshock game, so spoiler warnings ahead, but the game did come out in 2007, so... Starting out, I want to see if Bioshock is genuinely as good as I remember it. I also want to see how a lot of the mechanics in the game have held up compared to other games released after. So let's jump into Bioshock, and at the end, I'll give my overall opinion on the game, and talk about what it did right, or what I think it did right. Starting off, I kind of have high expectations for the game. I really enjoyed the horror aspects and the overall design of the game when I was a kid. The combat was really fun back then and pretty challenging for me. So let's see how that all holds up and if it's truly as good as I remember. Now, the game starts off with a cutscene of what I can assume is our character on a plane, just kicking back, smoking a cigarette. Then, what do you know, like all other games, the plane abruptly crashes, and we're left floating around somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, with nothing but parts of the plane and fire surrounding us. But off in the distance, I could see an obelisk, which seemed like a rather strange spot for that to be. Why is there an obelisk in the middle of the ocean? Why did I crash land right near it? Anyway, the choice from here was to either drown or go to the creepy obelisk in the middle of the ocean, so with those two options, I swam over. When I got there, I noticed a door leading into the obelisk was left ajar, and fuck it, let's go in. Immediately upon entering the door, sealed shut. What do you know? Inside, the first thing we see is a statue of a guy with a banner that reads, "No gods, only men," and it feels almost like a communist's wet dream with all these plaques reading about the greatness, I guess, of their people, science, art, and industry. I then find a submarine, and our only choice is to go inside, so let's see where it takes me. Now, let's talk about the opening scene in the submarine and how freaking cool it looks to see this city completely underwater. During this, we get a slideshow of Andrew Ryan talking about the city of Rapture, explaining what it is. Afterwards, we slowly make our way in, and we get another cutscene straight out of a horror film, where there's this creepy lady outside trying to break into our submarine. During all this mayhem, I end up hearing a voice over the radio, and I'm greeted by a character named Atlas, a rather important character. He claims he's gonna guide us through Rapture, so let's get started. I ran around for a bit inside, and I managed to find my first weapon, and they gave me a wrench. Not too long after that, I was introduced to combat, and I get to beat the hell out of some of these enemies with said wrench. After fighting my way through quite a few of these, I end up finding a machine, which Atlas tells me contains Adam. Of course, after my character hears this, he just injects it and falls off the balcony. We then get to see some creepy characters, like these dudes with bandages covering their faces, and not limited to a giant fucking scuba diver thing and a creepy little girl holding our syringe. I mean, we'll definitely get to know those soon. Anyway, let's talk about Adam, one of the first important mechanics you get in the game. This is like the currency that you unlock several different things inside the game with. It's pretty much the game's way of giving you spells. With it, you can also unlock a ton of different passive and active skills that help you with pretty much anything from hacking to fighting or saving money while buying things. And hell, even getting through certain areas of the map. We can talk more about it in the future, but for now, let's continue on with our mission to get out of this place. After awakening from the fall, I learn I have a new power, one that allows me to shoot electricity out of my hands. I had to figure out for myself how to get out of here, and I had to shoot this door with the electricity, and it opened. The electric plasmid spell, whatever you want to call it, also has other uses. I can shoot enemies with it, and they momentarily get stunned. Then I can run up to them and smack them with the wrench. With this newfound ability, I took out a few more of the splicers, and I found my way to an elevator and took a ride up. During the ride, Atlas tells me that I'm the only hope he has for finding his family and reuniting them together, and I'm given my first objective. I have to make my way to Neptune's belly. Along the way, Atlas also tells me that it was the plasmids that ruined Rapture and pretty much made everybody batshit crazy. It was during this trip to Neptune's belly that I ran into another one of those little girls, which Atlas explains are called little sisters, and the big metal dudes are big daddies. So the little sisters gather Adam, and the daddies protect them. I got to see how protective they are when a guy tried to sneak up on one of the little sisters, and the big daddies slammed him through a heavy-duty window, so yeah, might not want to mess around with those guys. So let's quickly talk about my first impressions of combat really quickly. Part of it can feel really clunky because this game is ancient at this point, but it can also feel kind of fluid and fun at times, especially when the enemy's health gets low and they start tumbling and running away from you and making it a bit more challenging. I really like how the enemies are able to just jump onto the ceiling and run away. It adds a bit of extra challenge trying to figure out where the hell this splicer just went. I'm kind of excited to see what gets thrown at me combat-wise, and I'm enjoying it more than I thought I would. I also really like the moment where the game told me to shoot the electrical spell at the water puddle and all the enemies it was in, causing them to all be stunned and get killed. It allows you to not only interact with the enemies, but also the environment. I find that pretty cool. Anyway, I made my way to a door that said Neptune's belly, but right before entering it, it closes, of course. Atlas then tells me to go another way, so off we go. And it was at this moment that I was introduced to the hacking skill, so let's talk about it. At first, I really enjoyed this minigame. It was like a nice little challenge, but towards the end of the game, it becomes less about skill and more about luck because it's so fast, and I didn't really care for that. There were several different plasmids I could get that were like passives that would help me along the way with hacking that we get later, but what I once praised as a minigame, I don't like it now. It's part of the game, I guess. So I hacked this drone and made my way through the door, and I managed to find a gun. This is the part where you find the SMG, and this bad boy is gonna help us the whole game through. It was also at this point where the game pretty much leaves you to your own devices. While running around, I learned I have to find this doctor named Steinman, and I gotta take him out. But our search for Steinman was cut short when my path led to a blocked door and a guy chucking grenades at us up on a balcony. Atlas explained to me that I needed to go search for a plasmid called telekinesis so I could throw the grenades back. I wasn't given much info on how to get the plasmid because one of the doors was frozen shut, but on the way there, I did see a room or an area called the Eternal Flame, so I figured I might be able to find a fire spell and light the ice on fire to get through the door. I do respect this though. It's like the developers are actually respecting their players and expecting us to be able to figure out how to get through this. I like that in games. Anyway, I made my way through the Eternal Flame area and I found a plasmid called Incinerate and was back on my way. Shortly after melting the wall of ice, I ran into the first thing I truly hate about this game. It doesn't really ruin the game, of course, but it's goddamn rocket turrets. They're so annoying. Their damage is way too high in the early game, and they only serve to piss you off. Not too long after taking out the rocket turrets, I found another really useful skill, which makes my wrench hit stronger, which is a godsend, because ammo is pretty hard to come by at certain points in the game, so using melee is helpful. I managed to find my way into a pretty unexceptional looking room, and we got our first real scare of the game. I saw a shotgun on the ground, and as soon as I grabbed it, the lights flickered out, and I heard voices circling around me and running and screaming. It was kind of freaky for a moment, but bet your ass when I could see all the creeps around me, they were going to be the first test subjects for my new double-aught buckshot. After that exciting fight, I found my way over to the telekinesis spell, and it was time to get back to the guy throwing grenades at us. I quickly confronted and ended him, and made my way to Steinman. Now it's time for our first boss fight. The fight was really nothing special due to the telekinesis powers. I just grabbed an explosive canister and chucked it into his face, and boom, he died. I feel like I'm really enjoying the atmosphere in this game, though, and if I weren't so used to watching horror movies or playing horror games, I think a few of these areas would actually scare me, like they did when I was a kid. I mean, a lot of this can't be scary when you first played this when you were like 11 or 12 years old, and now you're on the wrong end of 20. After that, I went back where I came from, and I found a pretty interesting foe. I came face to face with Little Sister, and was left with the dilemma. On one of my shoulders, Atlas is telling me to just kill her and harvest her for Adam, but there was a lady above me telling me, like, I should rescue her, but I'll get less Adam. I'm not really a monster, so I decided I'd just be saving the kids in the playthrough. After hearing Atlas say that, I really don't trust him, so let's get back to Adam. On every map, there are several different Big Daddies who escort Little Sisters, and you can choose to fight them and rescue Little Sisters. After doing that, you get a set amount of Adam, which you can use at specific shops to buy new plasmids or slots for plasmids. Adam is really like your skill points. You can get everything from a new spell to extra health or a perk that makes you deal more damage with fire. I really like the system. I think it's a bit more interesting than a normal skill tree in an RPG game, and it makes the progression come pretty fluidly throughout the game. Anyway, back to the game. Shortly after saving the Little Sister, I managed to run into one of the Big Daddies, and for the first time I got to fight one. The Big Daddy fights really get a lot harder throughout the game because there's several different types of them, so they're an interesting, fun little feature. They could be anywhere on the map, and sometimes they really screw you over, but I like that challenge. Anyway, I quickly dispatched this one with the Tommy gun and moved on, heading into Neptune's bounty finally. And as soon as I got into Neptune's bounty, I was greeted by another Big Daddy fight, but after defeating this one, Tenenbaum, the woman from earlier, the one above me, told me that Little Sister gave me a gift. So after you rescue 3 Little Sisters, they give you extra Adam and other loot like ammo or money. Seems like there's absolutely no point in killing them then, because the world around you is already evil. Why introduce more? I understand how it could be interesting to be evil in a game where the world's like good and you're supposed to be a hero, because you're given the choice to just mess everything up. But in this game, it just doesn't make much sense to me. Anyway, I made my way through this place, and I found a dude hiding behind a door. I needed to get through the door, and he pretty much tells me, hey dude, you're about to get messed up, so here's a grenade launcher. He wasn't lying, because right after I grabbed it, I had to fight a stronger version of the splicers. I think this one's called a spider splicer. This one can like run around on the ceiling and throws hooks at you. It wasn't very easy, but I got her to run off, and I was sent on a quest by the door guy to find a camera. While on my search for the camera, I fought a ton of different enemies, including a room full of turrets, which was a blast, trust me. After a while, I finally made it to the camera, and this unlocks a new mechanic. With the camera, you can take pictures of every type of enemy in the game, and you gain knowledge on them, and that gives you certain boosts and strengths against them. I didn't use this at all throughout my playthrough, because it's kind of boring, but it's a feature. After finding the camera, I had a mission to take a picture of 3 different spider spice. That's hard to say. Spider splicers. That mission took forever for me, but afterwards I made my way back to the door guy. Before I could make it through though, I ran into another Big Daddy. This one had like a sniper and shot proximity mines. I got my ass kicked for the first time, so first death. I eventually killed him though and made it back to the infamous door. The guy behind it made me put all my weapons away, which was really annoying. I had to fight quite a few enemies till I could get them back. I think this is the only time this is ever used in the game too. I don't get it. But it was time to make my way to Atlas's family. But before I got there, I discovered another upgrade mechanic. This one's called the Weapon Upgrade Station. I do like this feature. The game gives you several different ways that you can upgrade each one of your weapons, and you can choose whichever one you want to upgrade. I like that the game gives you several different ways to upgrade your character or the weapons you use, but I definitely wish there were more stations and more upgrades for each of your weapons. This was fine though. I really enjoyed finding them throughout the game. It was a nice reward for making it to specific checkpoints. Anyway, I decided to upgrade my SMG's damage because I'm a basic bitch, and made it to the submarine bay to save Atlas's family. It really didn't go over well because not too long after entering, our old pal Andrew Ryan blew it up. Seems like Andrew Ryan's always one step ahead of us. After watching Atlas's family get exploded, I was then tasked with heading over to Arcadia Bay, and if I remember correctly, this is one of the cooler looking places in the game. Although Arcadia Bay is where part of the story started to get a little disorganized for me. I pretty much just spent time running back and forth in order to save trees. I also found a pretty annoying feature in the game, being the security feature. So if you mess up hacking, or anything like that, you could set the alarms off, or if you stand in front of a camera for too long. And why does this have to last 60 full seconds? I mean, there are perks to make it shorter, but to be pelted by loud, annoying robots who make beeping noises and shoot a really loud gun for 60 straight seconds is not what I'd call a good time. I had to find this rose and give it to this lady who needed it, but right before I got to her, Ryan decided to gas her. I then had to make this stuff called Lazarus Vector, which I think saved the trees. But I had to get the recipe from her. Luckily, when she was dying, she wrote the code down. Thanks, lady. After opening the safe up and getting the recipe, I then had to search for all the items needed to make it, and had to go to a pretty difficult area called Farmer's Market. In there, I had to kill a ton of enemies, and after quite a while, I was able to craft the Lazarus Vector. I then headed back to the woman's office, and I released it into the air. This led me to have to defend against several waves of enemies, like a lot. I barely managed to survive because ammo is not plentiful during this. After a lot of fighting, I did save the forest, I think, and it was time to move along. Again, one step closer to taking out Andrew Ryan and escaping this hellhole. I realized I just summed up like 2 hours worth of gameplay in a matter of seconds, but we're off to Fort Frolic. And let me tell you, this is like one of the most interesting characters in the game we have to deal with here. His name is Sandra Cohen. He's by far the creepiest and weirdest character in the game, and I had a bit of fun running around doing errands for him. So let's talk about it. He told me I needed to meet him, and while looking for him, I came into this theater and saw a guy playing piano there. After waiting for a while, I was bored, so I shot at the guy, half expecting it to not even work, and he instantaneously blew up. Oops. Then Sandra Cohen's weird ass has me take a picture of him, his dead body for some reason, and wanted me to place it on this art piece he was making. So this whole section is us working for Cohen to finish this morbid art piece. I mean, as you walk through here, you get the feeling that the sculptures you see are real people, almost like that bad horror film from 2005 with that kid from One Tree Hill in it. It's like House of Wax, bizarre reference. After placing the picture, I then had to go off and kill 3 other dudes for him, all of which were pretty similar. I think they looked identical, but not to downplay this part of the game. I really liked Sandra Cohen's voice acting, and I liked this map too. I actually had to spend quite a while here because all the missions for him didn't have quest arrows. I think this might be a glitch in the remastered version, but I'm unsure. Over time, I was able to track down all of them and, of course, snap pictures of them and place them in their frame. After finishing up, Sandra actually came down to look at his artwork and admire it, and thanked me. With that, he gave me a few rewards, and it seemed like I had the ability to kill him here, but I think he was too silly for me to kill. Like, I let him live. After helping, he opened up the path, and it was time to leave. After entering the next region, Atlas told me that this is where Andrew Ryan's office is, and it was time to kill him. I just had to figure out how to unlock the door to his office. It seemed a little early in the game for me to kill Ryan, so I was like, there has to be a twist in the story here. Anyway, I had to figure out how I was going to shut down the power supply to this, and I had quite the journey ahead of me. This was a pretty fun part in the game, but I did notice here that the enemies were getting quite a bit tanky, like real bullet sponges. It wasn't like the game was hard, it felt like a war of attrition almost, where you always have a low ammo supply and a low supply of Evo and health. Evo is like mana, by the way. After pushing my way through for quite a while, I figured out I needed to make a bomb, which kind of piqued my interest. While collecting all the parts for it, I was looking forward to seeing the explosion. I like explosions. I took my freshly made bomb to the control room, and it was time to let it off. It was pretty badass watching this whole room get it blown up and escaping out this elevator. Pretty cool payoff for the long amount of time I spent here. It took me quite a while to build this thing. After blowing the shit out of the control room, I had to head back to Ryan's office, and here I thought I was going to get a really big showdown, but instead we got this. I'll just let you watch the cutscene.
You think you have memories, a farm, a family, an airplane, a crash. And then this place. Was there really a family? Did that airplane crash, or was it hijacked? Forced down by something less than a man, something bred to sleepwalk through life until they are activated by a simple phrase spoken by their kindly master. Stop, would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase, familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit, would you kindly? Stand, would you kindly? Run! Stop! Turn. A man chooses, a slave obeys. Kill!
Hurry now! Grab Ryan's genetic key! Now would you kindly put it in that goddamn machine?
So yeah, we got a pretty crazy twist here. I never beat this game as a kid. I don't remember ever even making it to this point. But yeah, Ryan tells us that people can control us with the "would you kindly" phrase and has us kill him for some reason. Atlas then asked me if I'd kindly take this chip and enter it into this machine, and turns out he's trying to take control of this place. I had my doubts about Atlas, but not to this degree. There was a lot of things not adding up. I mean, my character had these weird tattoos of chains on his wrist, and Atlas almost sounded evil at several times in the game. Anyway, after giving Fontaine, which is Atlas's real name, control of Rapture, he tells us he's been using us the whole time, and all these flashbacks and memories of our family are fake, that our whole life we were made to just take over Rapture for him. I then get a cool scene where these little sisters help me escape. Not too long after, my screen just goes black. I then awaken in a room with Tenenbaum and a bunch of little sisters. Tenenbaum explains to me that I grew up in the room and was genetically modified for Fontaine's control. She then thanks me for saving all the little sisters I've came across, and she said she undid some of the control that Fontaine has over me, but he'll still be able to pull some strings, so I gotta watch out. I'm then let out of the room by a little sister, and after leaving, Fontaine radios me and tells me to get stepped on by a big daddy, followed by "would you kindly." By the way, that phrase is going to be in my head forever, and I'm always going to remember it, so would you kindly like and subscribe? I'd really appreciate it though. Liking and subbing to the channel really lets me know what you guys like to see, and almost feels like a free payment from people watching the videos. That makes me genuinely happy. I love knowing that people like whatever I make. I'm sure anybody that makes things likes to know that, so let's get back to the game. After I didn't go step under a big daddy, Fontaine learns that he can't control me that way anymore, so he says he has another way. He ended up saying something else and telling me that it'll eventually make my heart stop beating, and it won't happen right away, but soon. Sounds silly, but let's go with it. So let's try to take him out before we die. While searching for Fontaine, I came to learn that he worked on some sort of antidote for his mind control, and I now have to go hunt it down and find it. Hopefully soon too, because every few minutes my max HP keeps getting lowered, which isn't cool. Anyway, I made my way up to this apartment and found the Lot 192 antidote. But it didn't work entirely because it managed to remove all my plasmids other than one, which just randomly shuffles between all my plasmids every 30 seconds or so. With a giant blue shift on my screen, it was really fucking annoying. Tenenbaum then tells me I'll have to find another dose, which will be difficult, because, you know, We don't have any plasmids. I mean, the game's difficulty's already getting really annoying with plasmids, let alone without them. Every enemy takes like 30 shots to kill, and the Big Daddy's now 2-shot me. So, after running around and getting my ass kicked for what felt like hours, I found the next dose and was back to full, breaking free entirely from Fontaine's control. So, let's talk for a minute. I'm really enjoying the game thus far, even with all the bullet sponges running around. It's kind of annoying, but it's not too bad. It's more so the lack of supplies I have. It's progressively getting harder to find ammo and medkits, I feel. Also, money seems to be running kind of low. By the way, you spend money to buy medkits and ammo and such. Having a final showdown with Fontaine should make it all worth it though, since we got cucked out of one against Andrew Ryan. With our brain back to full, I went around and killed all the Big Daddies I could to save the last of the Little Sisters on the map, and right before leaving to the new area, Fontaine told me it was time to fight. Wasn't quite so though. The plan in the next area, Tannenbaum said, was for me to become a Big Daddy, and boy did I have my work cut out for me. This area was pretty freaking massive, and it didn't have any quest markers to it. It took me quite a while of running around searching for all the parts I needed to become a Big Daddy. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but yeah, took a long time. After becoming a Big Daddy, I had a new task to escort some Little Sisters and help them collect some Atom. I didn't know the exact purpose for this. I think I missed the dialogue. I've noticed that's pretty easy to do in this game because you'll get pretty important story dialogue, but right in the middle of a massive fight with bullets flying past you and the enemies screaming, it's not too easy to hear or pay complete attention to the subtitles. But yeah, it took forever to lead these Little Sisters all the way through. I mean, you're protecting them from waves of enemies and they walk about like 1 mile an hour. In the end, I did succeed. I mean, I lost 3 Little Sisters, but I completed it. Before the last Little Sister left me alone, she handed me a syringe and it was time to fight Fontaine. So let's talk about this boss fight for a minute. The fight was really cool. I mean, I liked how he changed to different phases and he'd control different elements, but the fight was really easy, like way too easy to be the final boss fight this late in the game. It didn't take me very long and I took out Fontaine with the help of the Little Sisters. They helped me finish him off, which was kind of brutal, but it was a sweet ending. And because I saved every Little Sister in the game, I got the good ending. Anyway, let's talk about the game while the final cutscene plays, which was pretty cute. The ending fight was such a big disappointment for me. I mean, the sweet ending kind of had a nice payoff for a really fun story. I think the twist was too late in the game, so killing Fontaine wasn't what I had built up killing Ryan would be like. I think I liked it though. The story to this game was really interesting all the way through. Sometimes I struggled to follow along, but I really liked a lot of the characters that I met along the way. Especially the Sandra Cohen guy, and Tannenbaum was really nice. Also, the level designs were really kick-ass. A lot of them had a really creepy atmosphere, or were just like really interesting looking. You feel like you're in these apartments, but all of a sudden you look out and you just see the ocean floor with crabs and shit. Every space in the game felt completely different, and I think the developers did a really good job with the limited space they had, and kept it really fresh. I mean, we had anything from like science labs to forests, and cities, to just creepy art guy. Since the game came out in 2007, I do have to forgive some aspects I didn't like, especially some of the combat. I think it held up pretty well. I enjoyed fighting quite a few of the enemies, and felt like there was enough diversity in the weapons and enemies to keep it feeling good. I really liked how there was a lot of diversity in the plasmids too, and I honestly kind of wish there were more of them and they interacted with the environment more. I also respect the ramping up of difficulty. I mean, the Big Daddies did way too much damage at the end, which was kind of annoying, but I enjoyed it. For this being partially a horror game, in 2023, I don't feel like it holds up as well as it could have. I expected it to be scarier than it was. There were times while I was playing that a little voice in the back of my head was telling me like, hey, don't go through that door, but there was nothing at the other side, other than a normal enemy that I had to shoot a few times. The atmosphere, I feel like, adds a lot of the creepiness for it, and the sound design too. The fact that you hear like characters around corners and stuff. One part of the game that I really liked is how all the characters have a normal looking face on the radio that you talk to them through at the bottom of your screen, but then you see they're all scarred and messed up with like plastic surgery and bandages. I think Rapture has a really good atmosphere just in general, and it holds up super well. I feel like the developers spent a lot of time on that. Also, the progression all throughout the game was a great payoff. Like all the way through, I just kept feeling like I was getting stronger and stronger. I'm sure if I would have used the camera to collect data on all the enemies, it could have been easier and I might have felt even stronger, but oh well, I'm not a photographer. I also really like how the game's story wrapped up pretty quickly and didn't stay too long. The game felt like the perfect length to me. I really don't think there'd be much I would change about it. Maybe if you don't like the combat, you'd like to shorten some of those areas, but I personally had a good time the whole way through. Another thing I really liked was the whole looting system, just running around looting bodies and containers and finding random things hidden underneath staircases, finding different plasmids and passive abilities that are hidden off the beaten path. It made exploration in the tight and closed world feel pretty fun. I didn't think going into this game that I'd enjoy it as much as I would have. I mean, the game was made over 10 years ago, but I had a fantastic time. I really believe this was the golden period of gaming, and if I were to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it like a 9 or a 9.5. I had a lot of fun, especially compared to a lot of games that have came out today. It holds up a lot better than some of them do. So if you haven't played Bioshock in a while, or you've never played it, I'd recommend giving it a go, even if I spoiled the whole story for you. And I think I'm genuinely excited to play Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite. One, because I don't think I've ever played Bioshock Infinite, and I barely touched Bioshock 2. So if this video does well, you guys let me know what you want to see in the comments below, and I'll be making those. Also, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop me a like, and help me out with a subscription, especially if you want to see more content from me. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.